Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. This is Trayvon Martin. Most people would know who he is. On February 26, 2012, Trayvon Martin was walking home with Skittles and iced tea. As he walked home, citizen of the United States, not doing anything wrong, he was followed by a maniac who fancied himself a neighborhood watch, a cop sycophant, George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman, despite the police telling him to go the fuck home, despite Trayvon Martin not doing anything wrong, despite Trayvon Martin being an American citizen and having every right to be on that street and every right to walk home, Trayvon Martin followed George Zimmerman followed Trayvon Martin against what the cops told him to do, against good sense. Using expletives, even in talking to the cop, at one point calling him a nigger, at the very least it sounds like it based on the context of what's being said. George Zimmerman had a weapon. Trayvon Martin had iced tea and Skittles. George Zimmerman met up with Trayvon Martin, essentially caught up with him, got into an altercation with him, got his ass kicked by him, and after getting his ass kicked, pulled out a weapon and shot Trayvon Martin in the chest. Now, you would think that this would be an open and shut case. One person following another person, essentially stalking another person, after being told to go home by the cops, the very people who are supposed to handle matters like this, despite being told to go the fuck home, leave that guy alone, that guy's not doing anything to you, despite being told that, continues to follow the guy, gets into a fight, and only when you're getting your ass kicked, pulls out a weapon and shoots the person in the chest. You would think this would be an open and shut case. Do I, as an American citizen, have the right to walk on the streets? Yes or no? Do I have the right not to be harassed by somebody who's stalking me with a weapon? Yes or no? Do I, as an American citizen, have a right to defend myself if I am getting into an altercation with somebody who stalked me first and gets into an altercation with me second? You would think that for any prosecutor with two brain cells, that this would be an open and shut case. Not so much. The prosecutor was forced to push this case based on public pressure, and in no way wanted to bring this case. And you can see in the weakness of the way that they brought this case, not even giving a theory of the case, pretending as if, almost running the case as if they were doing the defense, as opposed to the prosecution. George Zimmerman walked. George Zimmerman walked. When Colin Kaepernick gets on one knee, he's not hooping and hollering. He's not making a big fuss. He's not screaming at the top of his lungs. When he got on one knee, part of the reason he got on one knee was for stuff like this. When people are saying Black Lives Matter, they're talking about stuff like this. It is an amazing case that somebody in this country that has every right to walk on the streets of this country can be preyed upon, can be killed, and get off. This takes place with cops all the time. Shoot somebody in the face and walk. There have to be extraordinary circumstances for a cop to get locked up for murdering a civilian, particularly if that civilian is an African American. And I say that from the standpoint of African Americans. Whites also get murdered by cops. You get murdered by cops at a different rate. Oftentimes, people think that their white skin is some kind of protection to this. I'm sorry, it is not. There are more of you that get shot in the face by cops, but that's only because there are more of you in this country. When you're going by the percentages, yes, more African Americans get killed, more African Americans get taken into custody. That's true. Meaning from a percentage standpoint, but from a number standpoint, you're just as susceptible to get shot, to get your property stolen from you as any other person in this country, particularly as a person of color. Meaning just like a person of color. Black Lives Matter is trying to make this point that cases like this, cases like Tamir Rice, where cops can kill, can maim, can brutalize, and walk, that's the point. When he's taking a knee, that's the point. That's the entire point that he's trying to get at. Shit like this. There is no situation where any person in this country, I don't give a shit what color they are, black, white, somewhere between, should be walking on the streets and should be able to get preyed upon and then walk after murdering a civilian. Are you fucking kidding me? I understand that this is something that we do abroad, but this is one citizen murdering another citizen and walking after murdering that citizen. He gets his ass kicked and then turns around and shoots somebody in the chest. And just because you're getting your ass kicked Does the person who was being engaged in this, meaning does Trayvon Martin, does he have an affirmative right to defense? Meaning, does he have a right to defend himself? And if somebody is preying upon him, are you telling me that African Americans can't fight back? That their best case is just to lay down anytime somebody comes up their way, anytime somebody pushes up on them, or anytime some level of aggression is showed upon them? Because if you fight back, you could be shot in the face or shot in the chest, and the person who shoots you will walk because your value is not all that recognized. Do you know that asshole, once he got off, he said this was God's will, that this kid was murdered, that I have no, I didn't do anything wrong, I was vindicated by this, and ultimately, I essentially saying that he thought that they were being somewhat unfair towards him. He thought they were being unfair with him in the process. He gets out, abuses his girlfriend or something to that effect. They catches him on some other charge and lets him go again. This is an amazing thing. I guess I'm trying to get across and nail down this idea of the amazingness of the story and the amazingness that this guy could walk. That any human being, any citizen of this country can kill another citizen of this country in this way. Stalk, prey upon, murder, and then walk. Can you really say Black Lives Matter if this takes place? And are you really shocked that you have people saying Black Lives Matter when it doesn't seem to be the case? I leave it at that. I hate this. This should never take place. That's all I'm saying. This should never take place. There's never should be a situation where this takes place. And then to turn around and say, it's God's will. It's God's will. He would be 23 today. He would be 23 years old today. When you're looking around and you're looking at these guys complaining and bitching about Black Lives Matter, understand where it comes from. Understand that this is not something that's just kind of, out of nowhere. That people are just bitching and moaning for no reason. This comes out of things like this, cases like this, where people are being murdered and shot, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of compensation or any kind of justice associated with it. That's where it comes from. That's where it comes from. That asshole is still walking around today. Do you realize if there was a kernel of goodness in you, if there was a kernel of empathy in you, meaning if there was anything in you that at all resembled what you would consider to be some semblance or shadow of a decent human being. You don't say, I murdered a kid, it's God's will. I'm just saying. You don't say, oh, I shot a kid, I murdered a kid, I have no regrets. I have no regrets. That's not something you say. I can see you being devastated by it. I can see you being hurt by it. I can see you be like, oh my God, this was a horrible mistake. I'm sorry that this took place. God's will doesn't really register. It doesn't register. I don't know what God he serves. Just saying. I'll leave it at that. This kid would be 23 years old today. His life was snuffed out by an asshole and was essentially given a pardon by a judicial system that didn't see the value in his life. I honest to God hope that Zimmerman gets some level of cancer, that he has some level of hemorrhoids, that he hurts for the last 15 years of his life, how long that 15 years is, or however long that life is. I hope that everybody that was on that jury that allowed him to get a walk suffers the same fate. I will be perfectly okay if he gets hit by a bus. I will be perfectly okay if he gets shot in the gut by some just random maniac. It is a shame that this is allowed to take place. It is a shame that this is allowed to take place. If there is a hell below, I hope he busted wide open, and I hope he is in eternal damnation for it. I don't believe there's a hell below, so that's somewhat of a moot point. I hope his torture comes here on the planet itself. I will leave it at that. Yes, that sounds bad. No, I'm not a good person in this regard. I don't think this is fair. There is no situation where this should take place. Like, this is not, oh, I accidentally stepped on somebody's shoe. I accidentally did this. He hunted him fucking down and then gets away with it. And the judicial system gives him a pass. So yes, if there's no compensation through the judicial system itself, meaning the system itself of American governance that's supposed to weigh the scales, that's supposed to balance the things, so you don't necessarily have this kind of civilians going after civilians in regards to balance the scales. You don't have a Batman in the equation. You have a justice system that's supposed to balance those scales. What happens when the justice system doesn't do that? What happens? What happens? When things happen in the society itself, and the justice system no longer is the justice system, at least for some certain aspects or certain people within that particular society, what happens? What happens? Like I said, I hope he gets hemorrhoids and cancer. I hope he has a miserable fucking life. I hope nothing good ever comes to him. And I hope the same fate for all those people on those jury that let his ass slide. I'll end it at that. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, you can share, write, subscribe, and Patreon. Thanks guys.